greatest time to be alive. We're on the verge of greatness again in this country. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about that, and then I want to hear from you, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. To the two chairmen of the Clark County Party and to the Nevada Party, I appreciate all that you do to make a difference for this state. Apparently this is a purple state. That's something that we have in common with your state in Florida. We're purple as well. And Republicans will win if we win purple states that are going to decide who the next president's going to be. So my guess is, I don't know about the rest of the 65 people running for president for the Republican nomination, but you'll see me out here a lot because this is important for the primary, and it's certainly important for who's going to be the next president of the United States. I'm excited about this. I wake up each day thinking, first, personally, I think, wow, I'm running for President of the United States. This is the greatest country on the face of the earth. We may not be acting like it each and every day. Our government's certainly is not as representative of the greatness of this country anymore. But what an incredible privilege. A lot of people ask me, well, how, this must be a burden. It's hard work. I'll give you my little itinerary for this week. Let's see if I can do this right. It's Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando, Greenwich, some other little town, New York, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, Tulsa, Las Vegas, Henderson. I'm counting Henderson separate. And I get to go back home tonight. So it's arduous perhaps, but it is an incredible joy. Because I start with the premise that if we get a few big complex things fixed, that this will be an extraordinary time to be alive in this world. And I know that we can do it because I was a governor of a state that was languishing a little bit, and I got to do it. I didn't talk about it. For the last 6 years, we've had a president who won based on his glowing oratory. There's no blue states, there's no red states, there was only the United States of America. But he had nothing in his background that would suggest that he had the leadership skills to fix a few big complex things to turn this country's direction around. Well, I do. I was governor of a state. I said what I was going to do, and I did what I said I was going to do. I cut taxes. I'm going to tell you the Jeb story in Florida. I cut taxes every year, totaling $18 billion, year after year. And by the way, we don't have an income tax either. So we cut taxes on things that made it harder for people to rise up. We reduced the state government workforce by 13,000, 11% reduction over 8 years. We reformed our career civil service system so that people working in government were the servants, not the masters. Compare that to Washington, D.C., where no one gets fired for anything, and the most sheer incompetence or corruption takes place. The one that really burns me up right now is OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. I don't know if you've been following this. This is the HR office of the federal government. And they had an Inspector General's report that suggested that their firewalls weren't secure. This is the place where all of the personnel information is located. It wasn't secure. They did nothing. The Chinese have broken into that system, and now it's possible that they have 18 million separate records. People that are working covertly, perhaps. All of the security clearances are on file here. This is sheer incompetence. And the woman running this place was the political director for the Obama re-election campaign. Now, I don't mind political directors. I hope I have a really good one all across the country. But they're not qualified to run something as sophisticated, as important as that. And when she was asked in Congress who was to blame for this, she said the Chinese were to blame. Obviously, but what about inside the government? It's always the dog eats my homework. It's always someone else is to blame. No one accepts accountability. Well, in Florida, we did. When there was a mistake, I cleaned it up. And we created a system where you could fire people for negligence or incompetence. We need that in Washington, D.C. We focused on rebuilding the best business climate in the country. And that's a competitive thing. In fact, our state system, our federal system is a darn good one because people do compete to build the field of dreams, if you will, where you can create jobs, where people can live in your communities and be successful. My objective was that personal income would grow at a faster rate than government income. Now, I know that sounds like a radical idea when you compare that to Washington, D.C., but over 8 years, because we cut taxes, because we reduced the cost of operating businesses, we not only led the nation in job growth with 1.3 million jobs, more than Texas. If Rick Perry wanders around here, make sure you remind him of that. Or if you ever see my brother, go ahead and tell him that too. Doesn't bother me a bit. 1.3 million jobs don't get created by just kind of osmosis. They get created because you build a better business climate. We led the nation in small business growth. And personal income grew at 4.4% during my 8 years. The government's expenditures, state government expenditures, grew by 2.2%. Don't you want something like that in Washington, D.C., where our income grows? The middle class has not had a rise in their disposable income in 15 years. It's either flattened or in decline. In fact, this is the first recovery where median income is lower today than it was at the start of the recovery. Obama economics has been a disaster for the great middle. It's been fantastic for people that have already made money. It has been horrible for people living in poverty, and it has been disastrous for people in the middle. I know that we can fix this because I did so in Florida. Disposable income in Florida for Florida families grew by $1,000. That may not sound like, but every year you get $1,000 more. You can pick whether you want to go and take a vacation. And if you do, I suggest you come to Florida. Or you can save for a rainy day. Or you might invest in your dreams. Or you can maybe make sure that your child goes to a quality university. All those things should be the decisions of Americans. Today, increasingly, the choices for Americans are narrowing because we're not growing our economy and we're not creating rising median income, and so more and more people are falling prey to the false choice of more government to be able to take care of them rather than more opportunity so that they can decide what they want to do. I want a United States that will grow and prosper just like Florida did. I want it, and I believe we can do it. I believe we can grow our economy at 4% per year. But we're going to have to fix some enormously difficult things, and it's going to require leadership. I took on the teachers union in Florida, and we won. I took on the bureaucrats, and we won. I took on the trial bar, the plaintiff's bar, that makes it harder for investment to take place, and we won. I don't have to talk about it. I haven't filed an amendment on some bill and called that success. I haven't sponsored a bill like Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is a classic. 8 years as a United States Senator. 3 bills that she sponsored became law. One was renaming a highway for Tim Russert, who I loved. He was a great guy on Meet the Press, but come on. A monument in a post office, I believe. No, I think we need to elect someone who's actually done it, that knows how to lead, that knows how to bring people together, that knows how to have an agenda and act on it. And the place where I'm most proud is in education. This gigantic bureaucracy and monopolies that refuse to change. In Florida, we created the most ambitious school choice programs. I applaud what's going on in this great state. You have now created one of the most important voucher programs, the education savings accounts, and you should give your elected officials a round of applause for the work that they do in your government. More school choice, higher standards, robust accountability, a focus on early childhood literacy, ending social promotion, this insidious idea that functionally illiterate kids, it should just be passed on to expect a good result. We blew that up in Florida. We challenged everything. And Florida is one of the states that has seen the greatest gains in learning. We were at the bottom of the pack, and we improved things. Now in Washington, D.C., I don't want to have a national school board on top of the 13,174 government-run, unionized, politicized monopolies. I don't want that. But I don't want the federal government to be involved in the creation of standards or content or curriculum directly or indirectly. But I do think if a state like Nevada decides that they want to embrace school choice, whether it's public or private, the federal government ought to be there to help them. Instead of just giving them money with a bunch of rules, they ought to say, if you're going to expand and be bold about this, the federal government's going to be your partner. Or if you want to expand early childhood literacy efforts and you don't want to use Head Start, we'll block grant that and give it to your programs that may be much more cost effective where you can expand the reach. Or if you want to have reforms that allow people to accelerate their learning, so maybe when they graduate from high school, they're also taking college credit, the federal government ought to be your partner for these reforms. That's what we should do, because we're never going to grow at 4% per year unless every person, a young person, has the skills to achieve earned success. But if we get that right, my goodness, this will be an extraordinary time. We'll outcompete everybody. But only 40% at best of our kids are college or career ready. This is a national priority. It's not a federal government program. And the next president needs to lead us to a far better place. We need to change how we tax. The most complex tax code in the world is stifling high-wage job creation. We need to fix this massive regulatory morass that exists in Washington, D.C. that makes it harder and harder for smaller businesses particularly to start up. We need to have the courage to fix our entitlement systems, because guess what? If we kick the can down the road just as Barack Obama has done and the Congress has done, we're never going to be able to grow, and we're putting burdens on our children and grandchildren that'll be impossible for them to overcome. Our generation has to step up and make the courageous kinds of decisions to be able to assure that people under the age of 40 are going to receive the things that they thought were a contract. But doing those things will allow us to grow and prosper in ways we can't even imagine. I've got 4 grandkids. The latest is 2 months old. His name is Jack. He's a cool little kid. Like, they're all perfect. I don't know about yours, but my grandkids are absolutely perfect. And little Jack, when he was born, I read in the paper, I was all excited about number 4, thinking about how do I get 5. That's what grandparents do that immediately, right? So I read in the paper that people born in this year are likely to live to their 130. Now, that's kind of scary on one level. I could just see your expressions. But on another level, it describes the time, the possibilities of this world that we're moving towards. And I think we have a responsibility to fix these things so that it isn't a burden, so that people can live long and prosperous lives of purpose and meaning that we can't even understand. But we know that we have to break through to the 21st century for our government to get out of the way to make it happen. And I also know one other thing. We can grow at the rate that I believe we can if we have leadership in Washington, but it's also going to require the United States to re-engage with the rest of the world. Yesterday, there were how many instances of terror around the world? Kuwait, Tunisia, where tourists, mostly from Europe, 35 I believe, were just murdered on the beaches of the Mediterranean. And across the board in France. And in the United States, we see now the threats of homegrown terror. There are 150 to 200 members of ISIS that are American citizens. It is not the time to pull back. It is not the time to create a void. It is not the time to think the United States doesn't matter in the world. This president is the first president in the post-World War II era that believes that we're not a force for good, that our leadership doesn't matter. And his Secretary of State for the first 4 years was a partner in that. I believe we need to restore America's leadership in the world, not to be the world's policeman. This isn't being about the world's policeman. This is about being a beacon of peace and security for the world. You remember, some of you look like you may remember, the 1980s. You remember peace through strength? That's what we need again. A strong military, a respect for our veterans, a strong counterintelligence capability, a strong NSA to be able to keep us safe, and an engaged America where our friends know that we have their back and our enemies fear us again. That's what we need.